garden over there, I forgot, you said was, how wide was that strip? You had two strips there.
Well, there was, it was, you know, a square acre, and I had divided up into like 8 sections, and I had 3 of the 8 sections done, so it was almost like a half acre. It was a 200 by, what the hell would it have been? Let's see, get 50. That's, an acre is a little more, but it's basically 200 by 200, so you're talking, I stripped 50 foot by, it was the whole 200, 50 feet by 200 feet. Yeah, I went the whole length, and then I had another strip 50 feet by 100 feet.
That's where you planted wheat.
Yeah, the 50 by 200, I had barley, wheat. I usually had about 3 different types of grain in there.
How did you thrash the grain?
I used to,
Flail?
I'd cut it down with a scythe, you know, those scythes and stuff, and then make it all into, you know, I just copy in these books, you know, you know how they used to do it in the old days. Look at, you know, and anyway, they put it all in bundles and wrap a string around it and stand them all up and let it dry. And of course, you know, probably all the same problems they used to have in the old days. You know, if it rained, you'd have to cover it. And I remember one time it looked like it was going to rain real good, and it rained for a long time. I ended up having to, you know, build like a roof over all the stuff, over all this tin and stuff I had all around. And anyway, let it dry out there, and then just take it. What I do, I built a big tarp enclosure or something, and you just beat it against something, you know, just like in the old days, you know, and beat it, and all the grain would fly out all over the place, and then, but you get all the little chaff and leaves and all that, and so, you know, you put it all together into sacks and stuff, and then on a good windy day, I'd take that stuff out, get up on top of a drum, make a platform or something, and put like a wash basin beneath me, you know, my big bathtub wash basin, or a tarp or something, and just stand up there and just pour the grain little by little. God damn, just like it was, you know.
Combine blowing.
Yeah, man, stuff would blow away and grain would fall.
Yeah.
And it'd be a grain, and stick it in that grinder over there, grind it up, you know. We did really good. We never, that 50 by 200 section never got, you know, we used to have these figures on what's optimum or maximum yield per acre, and then we'd, you know, figure out, you know, for like these small areas that we were working with, you know, we used to figure out, you know, how good we were doing. We never did good on the barley or the wheat, because that section at 50 by 200 was, you know, wasn't that old by the time we left here. You know, hadn't really had a lot of years to work, and you know, we never got a big yield off there. But on that 50 by 100 section where I used to grow the potatoes and the cabbages and all that, and that had a lot of years behind it. That was good soil, and we grew oats on that, and those oats used to, I think, I might be off on the figures, but I think like something like, we used to get like 75 bushels, the equivalent of what would have been if we grew a whole acre, 75 bushels to an acre, which was maximum yield. I remember even 40 was maybe halfway acceptable.
40 was about average.
Yeah, you know, we got 75. I mean, it was full-bodied, really good. Of course, it was like growing it on garden soil. You know, most people don't grow oats probably on, you know, soil with that much fertilization. You know, I don't know.
But you watered all the time.
Yeah, watered, and all the fish fertilizer that we used to use. The fish fertilizer was that's what got the stuff cooking. We used to have these 2 big 55-gallon drums sitting out in the bank, painted black, one end chopped out of it, you know, wooden covers for it. They were elevated off the ground on stumps or, you know, blocks of wood, and you used to have like those big oil spigots.
Yep.
You know, on the, you know, right on the bung hole in the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just like an upright drum, and on the bottom, you know, you had this oil spigot, you know, and then on the bottom, you know, what you do is you'd put like some rocks on the bottom or blocks of wood. Then you'd put some screen, and then maybe spruce boughs seemed to work then, just a couple of, a little bit of spruce boughs on top of the screen. And then we'd start throwing the fish in. And fish, guts, usually in the beginning of fishing season, it's mostly guts. Towards the end of fishing season, I'd be going up and down the river and collecting the dead salmon and bringing them home in the boat and throwing them in the drums. And anyway, after, when you first start out, you maybe wait a couple of weeks before you draw off any liquid, because you're just throwing guts in there anyway. It takes a while to build up, much volume that way anyway. And then you start drawing off your liquid, and throwing in more fish, drawing off more liquid. Like on hot days, if it was really hot weather, I could probably draw off 5 gallons or something every day out of each bucket. And I tell you, man, even when we're throwing whole salmon in there, salmon after salmon after salmon, we'd be drawing off. One year I made 4 drums of pure liquid fish fertilizer off those drums. And there wouldn't, and after you'd go to clean out the drums at the end of the season after going through that much fish, there's no water added to it at all. This is just that it would turn that fish to liquid. You'd look it was so hot, the mixture in those drums. There'd be no bones. All the bones would just get eaten up, and everything would be turned to liquid. Yeah.
The natural bacteria.
Yeah. And sometimes the flies would get in the damn thing, and you get a little outbreak, but then you throw more fish in it, and it just didn't matter what happened in the drum, and it all just helped break it down. But there was
fertilizer.
Yeah, oh Christ, yeah. You had to watch it. I remember, how fish fertilizer would, one time we had a little bottle of the stuff, commercial stuff, and it would say use a teaspoon or a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons to a gallon of water, and that was what you should water plants with. That stuff was so hot. I remember there were very few plants that, if we gave them 4 tablespoons to a gallon, it would knock the plants back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to watch it. It was the real
so
stuff.
Powerful.
Yeah, it was the real stuff.
Yeah.
About 2 tablespoons to a gallon of water would be about all they could handle.
Before you got the rototiller, you said something about you used the dogs to plow the garden?
Yeah, over in used to use that over in, we had a big garden over here, which is now in the river, and actually the island garden, we had a big 50 by 100 garden on the island over there, and your real sandy soil, and it was, that garden over there was long, see. We never used the dogs on any of these other gardens. Hell, we had like I say, we had a ½ acre under cultivation. We had at one time, we had a big potato garden out here, a salad garden over there, a major garden on the island, and I had the 3/8 of an acre over here, and that was all under cultivation.
Yeah.
But anyway, originally that was our first garden, that one on the island over there. And, the first time I ever did it, I'd break it up by with the shovel. Dogs, you jam a plow in the ground. 10 dogs ain't gonna move it.
Yeah.
But every year after that, in the springtime, I made this took some barrel metal. I made outboard props with barrel metal. I made everything out of barrel metal. Stoves, stove tops. But anyway, made this little plow thing on the end of a pole with a handle, and had some wheels made out of the ends of that's right, they weren't made out of the ends of barrels. It was made out of just big blocks of woods like you see in the old ox cart days, like on TV or something, And it's just this, put a tow line on it, hook up about 5 dogs to it, get them going, and run down the whole length of the island. And then I remember moving soil on the island. I had this big wagon made out of, it's still out there. It said, for wheels, it was the ends of 2 55-gallon drums, maybe about that much of the barrel, the sides of the barrel on two, so a little bit wide. And we used to move cartloads of dirt with the dogs, from one end of the garden to the other to build up the soil and dips and stuff. And I used to plow up the soil every spring with the guys, go back and They didn't like that. I don't think that was
Too hot for them?
too hot, real jerky, you know. But I used to get used in the summer, man. All logs out of the woods and stuff, cabin logs. And
How long was it before you put the well in?
oh boy, I bet we used to have it in the dirt floor, so I bet it was within. I bet we had that. Let's see. Originally, about 3 years after we were here.
So you built a cabin in '73.
About 70 price, 75, 76, might have even been 2 years. We had it, because in the old cabin with the dirt floor. But like I say, it was, the root cellar went down to within a couple of feet of the water table. And the pipe, it's not a straight pipe, it just goes, at an angle and then down. So we just run the pipe down to the root cellar and dry, it's plastic pipe. But then the last bit is steel, just bang the steel down to the. I remember it used to go dry. The first well we had, it wasn't that far down the water table, and sometimes
drop down.
Yeah, low water in the fall, or winter. Sometimes it used to get a little dry.
What caused you to leave Boston?
Boston. That was a long. I don't know. I think my friends were starting to. Yeah, I was getting like 19, 20 or something, and it was just, the first, before I came here, there was, I was other places, I didn't
British
just come
Columbia.
here from, I lived in BC and I lived in New Hampshire on a farm, kind of, or a little commune type farm, but like say when I moved up to New Hampshire, that was pretty much that's when I moved out of Boston. Friends were getting older, they were getting jobs, they were either getting jobs or they were dropping like flies, from getting messed up on something, and I don't know, it just seemed like I was spending a lot of time by myself, it was like you had to decide, like when you're a teenager, you run around, play around, go to the dances and get in trouble, but by the time you start getting 20 and stuff, it's like, well, you're going to be a hoodlum all your life, or you're going to straighten out and go to college and get an insurance job, or, that kind of thing. What are you going to do, and it just seemed like I didn't really, something I just didn't want to do either, I was it was a real lost, lonely feeling, I remember a lot of nights just wandering around, hitchhiking around, driving around my car, just not really knowing what the hell I was going to do, and like I say, I was two girls, I knew back there, they were up in New Hampshire at a rock festival, and met, some guys at a commune in New Hampshire, this farm type commune, and went over there, and they came back and told me how neat it was, and I don't know, something must have just clicked, and I just said, well, I'm going to go up there and check that out, and just all by myself, just went up and just, I look back at it now, it seems kind of strange just driving up to somebody's house, but that's back in those days too, everything was more, people were traveling around, hitchhiking, and just, it's different back then too, and I just drove up there, but, we had a lot of trouble with townspeople too. They didn't like us. A lot of long hairs in the place, and the place didn't have a future, really. And I moved on to somebody came along that had this idea of moving on to buying a sailboat and sailing to the Bermudas or the islands or something like that. And I went in on this. Well, we never got a sailboat. We bought this old, I don't know, for whatever, $2,000 or something. We bought this old cabin cruiser, 45-foot cabin cruiser. Real old, beautiful boat. The make of the boat was Alco or some. It was a really name brand boat, beautiful cabin cruiser in its days, but now it had seen better days. And did a lot of work on it and lived on that for about a year, and lived on when it was in dry dock. Never did much running around. Rebuilt the old Hercules 6-cylinder engine in it. And, eventually got in trouble with the police down there. They didn't like me in the boat yard. We were a bunch of long hairs on this boat in this real rich town south of Boston, and they kind of ran us out of the thing and ran me through a kangaroo court one time and said, listen, get off that boat. Afterwards they said, you don't get off this boat, we're going to make more trouble for you. So I moved to this, I was fishing out of about the time, and this next town over, and moved to this rooming house there and made some money and said, hell, I'm getting the hell out of here now, and bought a Volkswagen. Made best money I ever made in my life, and bought a Volkswagen, really nice one, and well, for $600. Nicest car I ever owned,
Well, bus or the Beetle?
A little Beetle, This is a nice little one, Well, back in that day, $600 to buy you a nice car.
Pretty decent little car.
I took off cross country, bought a few stupid things before I left Boston, like an axe, and I was gonna head somewhere. I wanted to get the hell, maybe out in the woods or something like that. There were a lot of people back in those days talking about like Oregon and the kind of the hippie crowd, which I was kind of around a lot, or I was interested in anyway. I listened to stories about like people living out in the woods in Oregon, Washington State, and so I was heading there, and went to California, lived outside of Berkeley for a while, for 6 months or something, and with a bunch of people there, and then up into Northern California, then up into the Seattle area, up into Washington State. I just drive into a town, and I'd be by myself, and just drive into a town, and maybe go to the local crash pad place and meet some more people just like me, and find somebody to, take a shine to, and just stay with them for a while. But basically what I found myself doing was going from city to city to city. Sometimes you'd stay out in the country a little bit, but it was always, roads and, and I kept like heading north, and all of a sudden across the border, head off into, Vancouver. Of course, that's, now you're in a big time city, and over to Vancouver Island, stayed with the Hare Krishnas in a Hare Krishna house over in Vancouver Island, because I crossed the border with this woman I met in Washington State. Her boyfriend was a Hare Krishna, so she talked to me to go visit, and that was interesting. Stayed at the Hare Krishnas, played guitar with them on the streets of Vancouver, or not Vancouver, on Vancouver Island, down at what's the big city, Victoria?
Yeah.
Something. Yeah, I remember. I wasn't dressed like no Hare Krishna, but I was, playing guitar with them while they're all doing the thing. Just it was interesting watching them. Really dedicated people.
Yeah.
I think some of the people who led them around were little crooks or something, like most of the religious groups back then. A lot of the people that were there were okay. It's just the leaders were the crooks and
Yeah.
But I did a lot of interesting things. But hell, here I am in the city. So I head up north. Next city, Prince George. Went to Prince George, picked up a hitchhiker. So I got a bunch of friends in his house, and there, Prince George is getting pretty. Even though it's a city, the people are really starting. It's like Fairbanks. They're kind of in tune with the outdoors, and they and actually, there was this. It's funny because I hadn't been thinking about this country in northern BC where I eventually ended up, but way back in Boston and around there, I remember looking at maps, the whole country, Canada and everything. I remember looking at this area in northern BC and hearing things about BC too, and I think I even might have seen the damn town, this little town, Manson Creek, on the map, and where I eventually ended up, and saying, God, there's no towns around there. Look at all that country. It's just so far away from any roads, and here I am, Prince George, pretty damn close to that town, and I said, God damn, yeah, I'm gonna head up into that country, and there's this road from Prince George to Prince Rupert, on the coast, Prince Rupert on the coast. Mm-hmm. And you get on that road a bunch of hundreds of miles, and Then there's this other road that starts heading north and eventually ends and turns into a dirt road. There's a mining road for another 100 miles. And yes, that's where I'm headed. So in Prince George, I bought gun, beans, nails. I'm heading there now. I'm gonna lose myself, I'm sick of this city after city after city, and I couldn't find. I was with that girl for a while, but basically, even all the way from Boston, come on with me, come on, let's go, and you'd have somebody for a little while, basically here I am way up there, Prince George, another city, kind of hanging around with people, yet nobody really wants to go with me, and so up the road I go by myself, hell with it, and yeah, I drove up that road and pulled into this little town, 11 Manson Creek, 120 miles up that dirt road, real rough road, washes out and all that sort of stuff. And closed in the winter. There's no traffic on it in the winter. Snowcat type thing brings the mail in once a month. Anyway, hit this town of 11 people. There's a little more activity there in the summer, people. But yeah, just just pulled up to the store. Little tiny store there, and
General store, like.
just hanging around, smoking a cigarette outside the place, and all of a sudden meet a couple of people, got a place to stay, and start to feel at home. Find out that there's there's about 11 locals living there. Find out that there's about another 11 people, not too much different than myself, that had either been there for a year, or not too much, but maybe a year or two, they'd been there. Basically, a lot of people skipping the states for the draft and stuff like that. Illegal, Americans. And, there was a busload of one and a few other here and there, and this guy, these two people coming through, talking on a trip up into the Yukon Territory, and me and this other guy that I was staying with, he said, gee, that sounds like fun, we'll help them get up there. They wanted to go meet this old guy, Spook Davidson, who they had read about in a book this old time, that brought the first horses in a wagon train up into northern BC. He was living out in the middle of nowhere, and sounded interesting, and I said, well, we'll go on that trip, and then when I come back, we'll build a little cabin and stay here. Went on the trip, and then came back afterwards, midsummer, and started building the cabin. And about a little while there in the fall, later, the RCMP and the cops in Prince George, and just they had planes flying in, beavers flying into the lakes, pickup truck loads of them coming up on the road, busted everybody. I was up in the mountain hiking around that day, thank God. They didn't get me, but they got 9 or 11 of us. One guy had been there so many years, they just told him, get out, and he was respected enough, they didn't haul him off, but they brought the other 9 down into Vancouver, into the prisons, and they didn't find some grass on him, they laid some grass on him, and, said we found it, and because see, it's real hard to deport people out of Canada, you'd think it'd be easy. It's not their country, get them the heck out, but they, most of them had a little, but some of them, they didn't, they just, look what we got, well, they will drop the charges if you leave the country. Anyway, there they all go, and that's where I got that wolf dog off of one of those guys that got deported. He had to leave the country. So when he came back up, they let him come back up to get his stuff. After that I said, okay, I'm going to spend the winter. I got my cabin built, got my food in, might as well spend the winter, but heck, who feels like building a root cellar next summer? Who feels like doing a garden? Who feels, they're going to get me some one of these days,
Yeah.
So I said, well, heck with it, I'm going to go up to Alaska. They can't throw me out of there, because see, I wasn't running from anything,
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was dodging draft or anything, so I came up here, first day my brother had was his wedding or something, summer or something. He said, "Your best man, come on down." Went down there, met my ex little lady down there who I had met before. You know, got talking to her. She come on up to Alaska. You know, I mean, at first it was just somebody to come. You know, it was just like when I was traveling across country going to BC, trying to find somebody.
Yeah.
You know, I was asking my other buddy, you know, this fella to come on up. And I thought he was going to come at first, and then there was this woman, you know, and you know, for a while it wasn't even like we were girlfriends and boyfriend, you know, it was just, you know, come on up, and yeah, next thing you know, she's heading down the road with me. We're heading down the highway, a 64 Chevy station wagon, rebuilt the engine on that. Up the highway we go, stop by BC, hike up the road in the winter, snowshoe up the road. They had the road broken out about 60 miles. We snowshoed the other 60. That was the first time my ex-old lady was out in the wilderness, like on a trip like that, a real one, you know.
And
The first day she cried a lot. I swear, I think we only made 2 miles the first day before we camped. Next day we made 8. I think it was 8, something like that.
Yeah.
Next day we made 20. Next day, yeah, I mean, each day, you know, just had a, you know, first day it snowed, just the snowshoes, you know, this and that. But yeah, got up there and got my rifles and stove and all that sort of stuff, and threw that on the male snowcat and had that hauled out. Off on the highway again we go. It was kind of like February when we went to BC and crossed the border here on April 1st. And like I say, by April 9th we were here and sold the car, loaded all the stuff in the plane, and landed 2 miles downriver here in Tozitna.
Did you know at the time when you picked this land that Tanana was 40 miles away?
Kinda, you know, I really wasn't too much in tune with Tana, and I you know, probably seen it on the map, but you know, we didn't go to Tana first and then come here, so we just came here.
So you didn't know where you were going to get supplies then? When you dropped in here, that pilot lets you out. You didn't know where you were going to get supplies or how you were going to get supplies.
No, but you know, like I say, I'd been given that name of Joe Runyon. You know, I'd given that name of this guy that lived in Tana. You know, I was aware the village was there. And
Yeah.
I was probably figuring that that's where I was going to go into. But like I said, I didn't even know how to get there. And the other thing was, when the pilot dropped us off,
Yeah.
like I say, we were concentrating on this area. When we flew in here, we were going to, you know, if pilots said, well, where do you want to go? They got to have a destination.
Yeah.
You know, well, as far as we concerned, basically, we didn't care where we went. Just drop us off out in this valley, you know. But he had to have a destination. And, of course, you know, we're looking at lakes that are big enough for him to land on and stuff. And so we picked out this one lake, and we got maps for around that area. These small-scale maps, you know.
Yeah.
Well, heck, that's 10, probably even 15 miles upriver. We didn't even have maps for down in this area, you know, or the map for down in this area. And when he dropped us off, we said, now where are we on the map? You know, because we were just flying over. You know, we're not even, Christ, that was only the second time in my life I was in an airplane, period, you know. And, you know, I couldn't keep track of where I was. And we said, well, where are we on this map? You know, after he landed us, of course, he's shaking because he's all nervous. He was kind of a green pilot. And he wasn't used to this, you know, just coming out and landing any old place. And, you know, now I know that from being around a lot of other bush pilots. But he's like, well, you're, yeah, here we are, right here. And he points to this spot in the map. You're right here on this bend here, you know. We weren't there.
Oh, 10 miles north.
For a month or, hell, more than a month. I think it was till the day that Ringo came up here, that guy with the riverboat in the springtime. Until that day, and he came up here and showed me on the map where I was and left me with his map. We'd go out in the darn flats here to head to this one lake to see if there was some ducks. There's no lake there. We'd head back here to look for a creek, and we'd hit a lake. Or we'd hit, you know, I mean.
Yeah.
But, you know, as far as finding Tanana, you know, we weren't that, you know, Tanana's south. I mean, you just head south, you look for a valley or, you know, I mean, it was.
But you had compass and everything, so you could travel.
Yeah, as far as like going big time, like.
And you
for
knew the
long
deviation
distance.
on the up here,
Yeah.
so that you knew you had probably 30 degrees deviation or thereabouts.
Yeah.
But you knew you didn't have a map to show you exactly where Tanana was until the guy from radar site came up.
Yeah. We, like I said, I mean, I had a large-scale map that showed Tanana on it, and I knew that Tozitna River's out here and Tanana's south, and you head south, you're gonna hit the Yukon. And,
Yep, you're going to hit the Yukon, and that's going to lead you one way or another to Tanana. Yeah.
That's
Then, when you landed, you start building a cabin, which took you 30 days. And then after you got the cabin done, you didn't have any dogs. You had 2 dogs with it when you got off the airplane.
Well, after a month after landing here, see, I had the 2 dogs that I had, when I got off the airplane, and like I say, after pretty much I moved all my stuff to this spruce grove here and stuff like that. A month after we, that decided, we better get into Tanana and stake the land and get some food.
Yeah.
And so that's when I picked up those 3 dogs off of Joe Running. And so I had, before the snow totally melted, I had 5 dogs.
Yeah.
At that point. 5.
And you'd build a sled or bought a sled?
Well, Joe had given me a sled. Of course, like I say, that burnt up in the fire.
Yeah.
Next fall, I had to build a sled.
So the fire took place, burned you out in the following year.
No, that spring.
That same year.
That same year, when we first moved here, we were just, like I say, the cabin was only 2 logs high. And
that's right.
Well, April 1st, April 9th, we landed here, and that fire probably took place almost around June 1st.
Yeah.
So.
God. So that left you with an axe and a saw and
A pair of city pants, because my other pants were burnt. And I was running around here with my underpants putting out the fire. Almost burnt up the dogs. Remember the eyelashes on some of the dogs were burnt.
God.
It was that bad. My legs were all burnt from unhooking the dogs because of the fire. Because they were, tied all real right around the cook shack.
But it didn't catch the forest on fire.
No, but geez, I'll tell you, once those spruce trees went up and sparks coming all over, and there were bare patches, we were running around all day long. There'd be a little flame start up over here, a little smolder. Man, it was like all day long. We didn't sleep that night either that much. It was just constant vigil.
Yeah, afraid you're going to burn your area.
We weren't used to this kind of forest. Even in BC, you got a lot of moss, but in BC it rains. That summer I was in BC, it rained 30 days straight.
Yeah.
And you might have even said it rained for a month and a half straight. But there was 30 days where there wasn't a day that went by where there was some drizzle or something. We weren't used to this Alaskan.
No rain.
No rain, dry, moss, spruce grove stuff. It's bad. You gotta watch it.
And the other thing is that when you find a large stand of trees like this, it's rather rare because of the permafrost. The tree can only go down so far with roots. And then the wind is going to blow it over. It gets too big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, sometimes foot and a half down, it's gravel.
Yeah.
And those roots don't go down into the gravel. It's just they spread out.
So you look at it, and to have these trees catch on fire, and you have to go to the river and find another spot with nothing to do it.
It used to be, actually, there's a lot of trees. This used to be a lot thicker out front here, and there was some. If you go out back on this trail, not far from the house, you'll be amazed. Big trees. This right around this cabin, we've cut a lot of them down for lumber, and the big ones I use for lumber, for cutting boards.
Building the boat.
So there's a lot of, there's a lot of big trees that you're not seeing. There's some monsters back there. Yeah, but it's good spruce groves aren't that far and few between up around here, but there are some nice trees in this valley.
You'd mentioned time that you'd taken moose manure and grease and so on, and cooked it and fed it to the dogs to keep them alive, along with some fish if you could get it. When did that happen?
Well, boy, I tell you, there was, boy, that was first even 5, well, 5 years, because that's about how long it took for the salmon run to build up. Those first 5 years were real lean, you know. I used to have 5 dog teams was about the limit, you know, maybe edge on 6 once in a while or something, you know, but about 5 dogs for, you know, like I tell people, you know, I've hauled more 55-gallon drums of fuel or stuff out here with 5 dogs than any other number, you know. And for a lot of years, that's all the dogs you could keep. And, you know, springtime come, the ground come up the river in large amounts, you know, finding all the little spots to lay in for the summer. You get a lot of them going past the house, you know, dogs eat good, you know. You get a moose, there's lots of guts, you know. Dogs eat good. Guts are gone, you know. Salmon season's over, you know, or midwinter comes. At least salmon up here, it's almost pure protein. There's no fat in it. They're just like dry cardboard when they dry them.
Yeah.
The flesh is white. You know, it should be red. It should be full of fat.
Yeah.
But it's all white, and it's you dry them. They're just hard as crack when you not even as much fat probably as like a white fish or cod, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in midwinter, you get 40 below. You know, you could throw them as many of those fish as you wanted, and they wouldn't even get fat, you know. And here, you got to allot them like 1 a day or something, you know. And you know, that's all you got. You know, you gotta. So you're really relying on, you know, marten carcasses and moose guts and anything else you can find.
Feed them some beaver?
Oh yeah, we used to catch a lot of beaver. We used to go on spring beaver hunts, you know, to like cross the flats that time. In Creek, they used to have a lot on them. We used to go over there and camp out for a week in the spring, you know, in the early years. But you know, even in summertime, you know, with all the fish, you know, once the water settled down and the fish were all spread out all up and down the river, you know, you'd fish out the holes, and you know, maybe a few days later there might be a grayling back in a good hole, but you'd fish them out, and that'd be it for. Yeah, I'd head off with a dog, and you know, and a pack on the dog's back and a pack on mine, and the fishing pole, and I'd maybe travel up river a mile and a half, to, you know, fishing all the holes along the bank, come down the other side, and you know, maybe have 30 grayling. Well, hell, 30 grayling will last you a couple of days. 2 days later, you got to go off downriver. Now you're fishing downriver. You know, and then you go back upriver, you know, 2 days later again, you know, and, you know, if there's nothing else happening, you're just doing this for, you know, time and time again, and it'd keep the dogs alive, you know, but then there'd be times where, you know, you'd come back with 5 grayling,
yeah,
and you'd be traveling 2.5 miles upriver, 2.5, 3 miles downriver. It's just getting too far, you know,
yeah,
to travel for, you know, and there'd be no beaver in the lodges up here because we ate them all out, you know. This is lean country out here, you know, and there'd be nothing happening, you know. You wouldn't see no moose, you wouldn't see no nothing, you know. I mean, at that point, if I saw a wolf, I'd shoot a wolf and eat the wolf, you know. Yeah. And maybe we'd have food, but, you know, we can't go feeding the dogs, you know, our food, you know. You know, we might have a sack of grain or something like that, or a sack of beans, but I mean, heck, you know, you take a 50-pound sack of flour or something. I mean, you start feeding that to the dogs, you're going to be out of flour, and then the dog is going to be out of flour.
Yeah.
You know, and so there were times, you know, the only thing to do would be, I remember not even having a fish to mix up with. I'd go up and down the sandbars with gunny sacks, and I'd collect the old moose shit, the winter moose shit, you know, the round pellets.
Yeah.
And I'd come back here and I'd throw it in the dog pot, and I'd take a bunch of grass, nice green grass, you know, because, you know, dogs eat grass, you know. And
yeah.
If they're sick and stuff, you know, well, they're
yeah.
sick, you know, they're starving, you know. I figure the grass, you know, it's just something filler, you know, something to get in their gut so they're not hurting, you know.
Yeah.
And I'd mix it all up and cook it, and that's what they'd eat.
Yeah.
That'd be their food.
And survive.
Yeah. and then maybe I'd have to do that for, you know, a couple of times in a row, and then all of a sudden, you know, a bear would show up. Boom, get a bear. You know.
Then they'd eat good.
We'd eat the bear, they'd eat the bear. You know, stay alive. You know, and maybe next thing you know, it'd be salmon season, fat time for a while. You know, everybody's eating salmon. You know, just up and down, up and down. You know.
But at times, when you got to the point where you had to thin the dogs out, you said something about it one time. You went from 13 dogs down to 3 or 4 dogs. That you ended up there was no food for you, none for the dogs.
Yeah.
That's when you had to start eating dogs.
Yeah, that first it happened a little the second year, but the first year was pretty grim, mainly because I wasn't used to, you know, I mean, dogs were always kind of like pets to me, you know, or something, but we had our, what do we have, 4 adults, well, we had those 5 adults. Yeah, that's right, we had those 5 adults. And it was the first summer. That was the year they brought all that food up to us from the Air Force site here, you know, and saved our necks after the fire. Like I say, a lot of the food, it was a lot of food, you know, a lot of boxes, but we ate it up real fast. A lot of it was cans of juice and stuff. It was a lot of food, but by fall time, you know, we shot our moose, and we were still doing good then, but we ate up our moose, and then, you know, nice big moose too. I remember it was like almost 10 gallons of fat off the darn thing. One of the nicest, biggest moose I shot. Anyway, I remember we were down to probably like 2 quarters left or something on the moose, something like that, 3 quarters, and the dogs are starting to, no food, and it was the first year. I think I only put up with like 100 salmon or 300 salmon or something, and by the time fall started, you know, like it started to get, you know, cold and cool and stuff like that. I had like 100 salmon put up for the winter, I figure, you know, because I was feeding some of the dry salmon even in the summertime after the salmon run ended, so I didn't have much put up for the winter at all. And so I fed, you know, didn't like doing it, you know, but okay, you know, what we're going to do, okay, the dogs get a quarter. So little by little, you know, these 13 dogs are about, well, what did I say, 5 adults, and then we had a litter of pups in the spring, and we had 13 dogs. Now the puppies are getting big, you know, they're 6 months old or something, you know, good-sized pups, basically eating what a full-grown dog eats.
Yeah.
You know how pups are, 6-month-old pups. And, that quarter went fast.
Yeah.
It don't last 13 dogs long. And all of a sudden, you know, and meanwhile we eat up another quarter, and now, you know, instead of having 2 quarters left, we got 1 quarter left. You know, we're out of everything. I think the only thing we had was we had a little bit of flour, maybe like a number 10 can of flour, or 1 little 10-pound sack of flour, or something about that size. And when we were still eating moose meat every day, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and supper. Huge platters of moose meat. You know, it's so lean. It's not like beef. You know, there's no fat in it. It's amazing how much moose meat you can eat if that's all you're eating. And just moose meat, big steaks every day, just big platters. Just sit there and eat 3 or 4 steaks, something the size of like when you go in a restaurant, you'd have a steak.
Yeah.
We'd eat 3 or 4 of them in a meal. I don't know. It just seemed like that, you know, huge platters, you know. And it wasn't even like a round dish. I remember she had a big platter. It was literally a platter, you know. And aside from that, I remember she was pretty much in charge of the shelf food, you know, the flour. And we knew we were going to have to get out to town, but we didn't want to go right now because we had no snowshoes, no sled, no tow lines, no nothing. Everything had to be remade because it all burnt up in the fire. And, you know, if you go to town without that stuff, you know, we could make it into town. It wasn't like we were going to starve. You know, we were never worried about like dying from starvation. It was always we wanted to live here. You know, we didn't want to leave here. It wasn't a matter of we could out any time. But like, you know, we get to 10 and yeah, here we are, you know, we got nothing, you know, help us, you know. We didn't, that wasn't what we wanted to do up here, you know.
Yeah.
We wanted to get, so we pushed ourselves and we're staying here trying to make snowshoes and sleds and our sled and all that stuff. And, you know, but in order to stay here, you know, you gotta feed the dogs and you gotta feed yourself. And so I remember every day she had this flour thing set up where every day we would get, it was like a tablespoon of flour. It was enough that she could make a little pancake cookie type size piece of bread every day. She'd mix her little tablespoon or half or a quarter cup or however she had it measured out of flour every day, and she'd make one little, you know, cookie thing. But I couldn't stand it, you know. I get my little ration of flour, and like I probably tried it a couple of times, and boom, gone, you know. I'm a big pig, you know. Just gone, you know. It didn't satisfy me. So what I used to do, when I would go outside, and I'd get one of these number 10 cans, these gallon cans here of snow, mix it up halfway with snow, and I'd put the raw flour in the snow and mix it up, just like you mix snow ice cream, you know.
Yeah.
You know, only this is just flour, and I'd eat the snow with the flour in it. I can't even imagine doing it now. I mean, it just, you know. But that's what I used to do day after day, because it was more, you know, you could just sit here and you could just eat spoonful after spoonful. You feel like you're doing something, you know.
Yeah.
And I'd be eating my moose meat, you know. And well, then the moose meat's gone, you know. Maybe the sled's built, you know, and one of the pairs of snowshoes or half the pair, or one of them or something, but we still got more to do, you know. You know, by now there's getting to be enough snow on the ground. You got to have snowshoes.
Yeah.
You know, so we got to have now in order to get out, we got to have 2 pairs of snowshoes. So I'm working on that. I remember I was running through the woods with my gun or something after something, a moose or something, and I remember I fell on my gun and broke my fingers. And I got broken finger, and I'm trying to pull on the babiche and stretch, you know, do the snowshoes and all this, wearing a broken finger. And, you know, no biggie, but, you know, I mean, it's just
slow you down.
Slow me down, you know. So, looking at these dogs and going, well, 13 dogs, and okay, where's the clunkiest looking, slowest looking, laziest looking dog, you know? And off he goes, you know, into the dog pot, you know, take the rear quarters off of them and cook them up in the house, and, you know, and we're probably starting to get thin now because, you know, the amount of meat, you know, we're eating is a lot less than the moose. Of course, the puppy's a little fatter meat, you know, it's actually not bad meat, where they say 3/4 of the people in the world eat dog, you know.
Yeah.
We're just one of the few countries in the world that don't eat it, really.
Right.
You know, it's actually really good meat. It tastes a little bit like chicken or something. I don't know. It's real. And puppy meat's white meat. You know, it's not real reddish. You know, it hasn't turned red like an adult. It's good meat anyway. So you know, but then 2 days later, the dogs are out of food. We're out of food.
Yeah.
Another puppy. You know, 2 days later, another puppy. 2 days later, another puppy. Thanksgiving Day came, and by now there were some people that were downriver. They weren't living there, but I guess they had flown in during the summer. We heard those people had come up in the spring. They told us that there was some guy that had flown in the summer before, looking over some land down 10 miles down. So we had never gone down there and checked him out, but I guess he had been in and out of there that summer, and that fall, I guess they came in, this guy came in, Jack Bloom and this other fellow, Russ Wood, they came in. Eventually both of them settled down there. Russ is a really good friend, Jack's a really good friend of mine now. They were good neighbors down there for a lot of years, but back then they just came in to work on Jack's place together, and Russ was going to stake some land too when he came in. And so he had heard about us up here too, that there were some people up here, because from people in Tanna. So he decided, he's really an energetic guy, this guy Russ, and he decided, I'll walk up there. You know, they had to work down there, and he had an extra day, and he figured he'd walk up here. walk back down the same day. You know, nothing for us back then to walk, 20 miles round trip, a day. So I guess when he left down there, he didn't know anything about us. He left down there, and it was Thanksgiving Day, the day he showed up here, and Jack and him were going to pull out of there in a couple of days, and Jack said, "Hey, I got some spices and stuff here. Maybe they're, sitting up there, and they don't have here some meat tenderizer spices or something. Here's some salt, and, just going to go bad here or something, just take it up to them, and a couple of candy bars or something for himself, and off he comes, So he shows up here, and the only thing we had to offer him was a nice casserole dish with, like I say, a nice glass cover, and a couple of puppy quarters all fixed up, and he didn't want any, but that's what we were eating that day, and that was all. No vegetables, no potatoes, just the puppy quarters, and he left that damn spices, and said, "Well, we'll see you guys maybe next summer or something, maybe we'll be out this way, building a cabin or working on one." Anyway, 5 minutes after he left the cabin to head back down river, we looked at that little jar of spices. She got half, I got half. Down the hatch. Yeah, it's just like food. That was food, man. Salty,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was food. You eat that right in the spot. That didn't last us a couple of months. That was right there, gone.
But the spices, you look at it, it doesn't sound like it's any form of food.
Yeah, it tasted good though. It probably didn't have many calories. It probably wasn't food, but we ate it, man. We ate it like food. We ate anything.
Yeah.
And not to say we didn't get a rabbit once in a while too, or something like that back then too. We had snares out. I remember I had had all these crazy, I had all these books on how to survive in the woods, with these snares with these poles that spring up, and I remember all I had for snare wire was guitar wire. I had a guitar, and I took all the, actually my guitar burnt up in the fire, so I didn't have a guitar, but I had all these extra strings, for the guitar, and I remember taking all those guitar strings and making snares, and I remember lost some good-sized animal one time, because, guitar strings aren't that strong, but then getting a lynx one time with one of the damn crazy traps used to make, and, I ate that,
But
that's gone.
Did they work though?
Oh yeah, they work.
You'd hang them up in the air every now and then.
Yeah, or kind of hang them up in the air, but yeah, it was all good book stuff, a lot of stuff out of books, it's correct if you do it the way the person who wrote the book,
And you're in the same environment.
And it, use the same size wire and use the same size pole. But trapping back then, I don't even think we owned a trap back in those. We didn't own a trap.
Yeah, you had to shoot them or whatever.
Yeah.
So you had those guys 10 miles downstream.
Yeah, but of course, like I say, within days they were flown out of here.
Yeah. Okay, and then upstream you had the vegetarians when you came in.
Which weren't living. They had 10 days prior to us landing here. They had been rescued out of there, so we didn't have them up there that summer.
So the vegetarians.
I've actually never even met them.
What was their names? I forgot.
Well, it was the Rayfields.
Rayfields was a family.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, man and a woman. I can't remember their first names.
And they were vegetarians. And they were starving when they came in here and took them out.
Well, actually, they left them with. It was fall. I guess all summer long, they had been trying to get up here. They were came from California. The guy had some sort of a guru or something, and his guru told him, maybe he was going to come to Alaska, and his guru told him, well, if you're going to go to Alaska, I don't know how it went, but it was something about if you're going to, go to Alaska, and the Ray Mountains, if you look at a picture of Alaska, the Ray Mountains is kind of in the position where the third eye, that mystical third eye is. And so go to the base of the Ray Mountains and live. That's where you want to live. You want to live in the third eye of Alaska. So that's why they ended up in the Tozitna Valley. They had been trying to come up here for, all summer long. I guess somebody had tried to bring them up in an airboat and cracked the propeller, down on the main Tozy, and had to turn around. There have been a few attempts, at them getting out here. And finally in the fall they found a pilot and paid him some money to fly them out to a lake about, I don't know, 6-8 air miles upriver, something like that, and landed them in there in the fall, probably in August or something like that, and landed them on this lake, and they hiked 2 miles to the river and hauled some of their supplies to the river and started building a cabin and getting ready for the winter. And but like I say, they were, didn't believe in cutting down live trees. So when they built the cabin, they got all these rotten logs from the sandbars and built their cabin out of that. Built the cabin on the wet, boggy tundra instead of building it in a nice dry spruce grove, because they didn't want to disrupt the forest life, of the trees, and the river, which go down the river by the hundreds in the springtime when the river's eating away at the banks. But it's just, they didn't want to disturb anything out here. Nature disturbs itself out here, but they didn't want, I don't know. But, did crazy things like spent all their time making a elaborate stone floor in the cabin, but spent so much time doing that winter caught up on them, and they didn't even get a door and a window put in their cabin. And so the 2 holes were just left open, and that's the way they went through the whole winter. The winter just, they, like I said, you could see how they had a lot of real hippie ideas, and did elaborate stuff. But the basics, they didn't take care of the basics, and all of a sudden it's winter, and and they had a nice barrel, trash barrel that they could have made a stove out of, and instead they cut it all up and made a liner for a fireplace, because the fireplace is more homey or whatever, but up here fireplaces are worth nothing.
Right.
Just did stupid things like that, and anyway, about halfway through the winter, I guess they moved into their sleeping bags and basically never left them, and they had a couple of dogs, and they had shot a moose in the fall time. And they're vegetarians, didn't believe in killing animals and stuff like that, but I guess by now, things were maybe looking a little desperate, and they realized they didn't have enough food, and they better do something. So they decided to shoot a moose. And see, they left a tape. They were doing had a little tape recorder with some cassette tapes, and they were doing like a diary. And we found them, in their place after they left, and we listened to them, and they would just talk on the tape about, their ideas and their theories, and they'd always be talking about the pilot's going to be back. The pilot should be back any day now. Because the pilot that dropped him off, was supposed to be back with more supplies. Well, the pilot who dropped him off had forgot where he dropped him off.
Oh my God.
And the pilot had flown out here again. It turns out, they found out later, people in Canada found out. Then he went up the Dag Valley. He thought he landed on a lake up Dag Valley, which is the southern creek that heads up north here, 10 miles down river. And meanwhile, they're, 8 miles up this river, and they never found them,
So half their supplies weren't there.
Yeah, they never had their food for the winter. So they shot after their while, you could see them talking on the diary tape about how, like, I don't know, it's not looking good, and the days in between the diary, like now, instead of every day on the diary, giving a short little thing about what's going on, a week could go by, and stuff like that. And so anyway, they shot this moose, and on the tape, it explained, like, it was almost like they were trying to justify shooting the moose, and like they felt guilty, and stuff like that, and it was like they're justifying why they shot the moose. So they went into describing their thinking behind shooting it, and I guess they had a bunch of soybeans and mung beans and stuff like that, and a lot of white sugar. If they're that healthy, I don't know what they do with all the white sugar, but all this white sugar. And their idea was that there's 2 people, 2 dogs. There wasn't enough mung beans and soybeans for all four.
Yeah.
But there was maybe enough to get them a good ways into the winter for two, you know, the mung beans and soybeans. Okay, the moose meat, they didn't say anything about which would be healthier, but they, you know, which would keep them alive better. But so they decided what they'd do was they'd feed the meat to the dogs,
Yeah.
and they would do the soybeans and mung beans. And the reasoning behind it was that if they fed the mung beans and soybeans to the dogs and kept them vegetarians, that their minds would still be stable, and they would be in tune with the third eye and all the mystical stuff, you know, and they would be okay. But if they ate the meat while the dogs were eating the good stuff, they would be so out of tune with reality and messed up, and that when it was all over and they got out, got to civilization, got back to the health food store, that they might not have the mental stability to get back into and to get back in tune with, you know, the real life, you know, or something like that. So what they were going to do was they were going to keep themselves in tune with the third eye and the mystical life, and screw up the dogs, let the dogs eat the meat.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, you know, them being human beings and highly intelligent and all that, you know, they would be able to, you know, then nurse the dogs back to health on a diet of soybeans and mung beans and stuff, and sugar and stuff like that, whatever they fed the darn things, you know. And they would be able to, over a period of a year or whatever, you know, get the dogs back okay, you know.
Yeah.
Because they were okay.
Yeah,
because
they keep their mind straight. They get the dog straightened out. But if it went the other way and fed the mung beans, the dog, they ate the meat. The dogs couldn't keep them straight.
Right, they might end up being drug addicts on the street with their two dogs hanging along behind, or criminals. Or anyway, they so what they did was they dug a hole out in front of their cabin, put the moose meat in the damn thing, and the dogs sat next to that hole. They said this on the tape. They said, now all the dogs want to do is sit next to their hole by the moose meat. Yeah, I can just picture these two bloated dogs sitting next to this moose meat, you know, and every now and then eating some moose meat, and then, you know, I can just picture something like that. And then anyway, what happened anyway was the darn hole filled up once freeze-up came. The water just seeps in from the tundra, you know, because the tundra don't freeze down right away. You know, in the springtime when we were there, we could see the moose meat down, and it was like a hole full of water with moose meat, and there was still ice in there.
So the poor dogs didn't get to eat it.
Didn't even get to eat all of it anyway. But they said when they pulled the people out, the people in Tandas told me that they said the dogs didn't look that bad. You know, they're probably off catching a rabbit or something once in a while too, and huddling up and staying warm and half hibernating. Well, they were sleeping in the sleeping bags with the people, is what the dogs were doing.
Keeping each other warm.
Yeah, that's what they ended up doing. That's what they said in the tape. But those poor people, man, I guess the girl got a little frostbite, lost a little bit of skin on her toes, and I guess the guy gave up. She was the one that kept going. He gave up, and that's what they said in Tana, that he gave up and just stayed in the sleeping bag all the time. She was the one who would go out to the river and, you know, get water, chop a hole in the ice and get the water and bring it into the sleeping bag and mix it with the beans and then sleep with the soybeans. You can imagine, you know, soybeans take a day or two to start sprouting, or mung beans, you know, all that stuff takes a day or two to start sprouting before, and that takes another couple of days before you can eat them, before they get good sprouts, you know, maybe 3 or 4 days, I don't know, you know. And you can imagine how slow that stuff must, I don't know, you know. I suppose maybe it was warm in the sleeping bag, I don't know. You know, sleeping next to a pot, I mean, everywhere in their cabin, every pot, jar, can in their cabin, you know, there's probably 10 of these things all around the place. Just everything had the remnants of a couple of sprouts, and you could see that they used everything for sprouting at one time, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, you can imagine them laying next to an open pot that didn't even have a cover. You know, it wasn't even like a jar with a cover that you could just lay in. I mean, and not worrying about spilling it, or I don't know.
Keeping it warm enough to sprout with body heat.
Yeah, but they did it.
And I wonder how about firewood? You said like they had a fireplace like thing. Probably they didn't do much for firewood. They probably
right. Yeah, I don't. just from the looks of the trees around there, there were a lot of little trees chopped down. Looked like somebody chopped them with a blunt axe or something, which the axe was blunt. They had all the files in the world they needed to sharpen everything, keep the bow saw sharp. But here they are axing down trees with a blunt axe, and they couldn't sharp. The bow saw couldn't cut. But actually, I brought the bow saw here, and it was one of my main bow saws after a while. You know, just sharpen the blade. You know.
Yeah.
But they didn't even use the thing; it wouldn't even cut. But yeah, I don't. We tried to light a fire in the place. It was 0 degrees, I think, the day we showed up by there. The morning we showed up there, something like 0 or 10 above. And if you got the place warm enough, you're sitting in front of the fireplace with the fire going. And if you got the fire going, a little bit of a fire, you can warm your hands. If you got the fire going warm enough, and enough of a fire warm enough to warm your body, the smoke was so thick in the cabin, because the chimney was so short it didn't draft. It wasn't made right, you know. The whole chimney wasn't made right, you know. And if you got the place warm enough to warm your body, you was getting smoked to death. Yeah. So I don't think that they kept very warm by that fire. Plus, the door and the window were open. There was no hole there, you know. I mean, there's no door there.
Who discovered that they were near starvation? Had to get them out.
There were some people in the spring. The guy I gave the tape to eventually, this guy that Don Kratz knew lives over in Indiana. I gave him the tape because he was the one who rescued him with this other fella. Anyway, they were flying around. You know, in spring, Don used to fly around and have a plane. And he was just flying around one day, and maybe they were kind of keeping an eye open for them, you know, wondering where they are. You know, because people in town are always wondering where they are and stuff like that. And they never showed up that winter. But basically just out looking for caribou or something, you know. And he came across a big help out in the snowshoe, out in the snow, and saw that, and then saw the cab. And the only place they could land was they landed out in the lake and snowshoed into them, and gave them some, let's see, did they land? I don't know. You know what they did? They landed, that's right, they landed on the damn lake 2 miles away from them. It was getting too dark to snowshoeing or anything like that. They flew over the cabin, dropped some sandwiches and stuff in a note, and said, "We'll be right back the next day. It's getting dark. We'll get you out of here." You know. Mm-hmm. They saw that they were standing up and they were alive, and figured they lived this long, they'll live another day. You know. And they came, and he had two-place plane anyway. So the next day he came back with, I forget, it might have been a bigger plane, Greger's plane or something, or he came back with just an empty plane himself and shuttled them out. I forget, you know. I wasn't in town at the time. I just was told these stories. And anyway, flew them out of there. Like I said, within 2 days he was in the town school giving lectures to the kids on how to survive in the woods. You know. The guy is now a politician, and he was running for some city council member office in Fairbanks. He said, you know, I'm a politician, man. You know, I mean, that's where all the politicians come from. You know, so.
Yeah. But the guy really didn't have enough intelligence to survive out here, and it sounds like he was extremely poorly prepared.
Yeah, but like I say, the amount of tools they had up there was more than the amount of tools we had here. Yeah. And when we cleaned out their place after they left, you know, we knew that nobody was ever coming back to there.
Yeah.
When we got all their tools from, I mean, we didn't even have a shovel when we came here. You know, I didn't have a wood plane. I didn't have a lot of wood tools. I mean, there was, you know, draw knife, all that. They had all that. You know, where they had all the typical build your house in the woods type hippie equipment. Sharpening stones. I didn't even have a sharpening. I had a little tiny sharpening stone. You know, they had a nice big one. You know.
Did they know how to use it? Was the next?
No, that's the thing. They didn't know how to use it. You know, a lot of that stuff I was chipping out of the ice in their cabin.
Yeah, they didn't know what a draw shave was really. Did they have the equipment to do pinning? I mean, the wooden peg building and so on.
Let's see. They have a drill. I don't think I ever got a drill out of there.
But the draw shave probably mainly from barking, removing bark and so on.
Yeah, you can build a cabin without pegging logs.
Yeah.
You don't need, you know, you can build a shed roof on that's all they had on that place anyway, was a shed roof. You just lay the logs on it.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing's built without any pegs and stuff, except for the ridgepole poles. And if this had been, if I had put a shed roof in this, I wouldn't have even needed that.
Yeah.
You know?
The shed roof is the flat roof.
Yeah. You just lay like a trapping cabinet. You don't nail that or anything. You just lay the poles in the roof. You know.
And cover them with whatever.
Moss.
Yeah.
Dirt.
And hope it doesn't leak too much.
Yeah.
So then, those neighbors were gone. That just left you who was downstream there. You know, you'd mentioned sometime where you ended up having to eat dog food. Times got so tough that.
Well, after the fire, yeah, that's all we had was that burnt soybeans, and there wasn't enough of them, so we had that sack of dog food up in cache, and we mixed that together and grind it up in the hand grinder and put some water in it and put it in the frying pan and just let it sit over the heat and make little bread things out of it and eat that, you know. Like I said, I'll eat anything. My ex-old lady, she was, like I say, complaining and getting thin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I always had, if there was something to eat, I had a fat belly. My belly was full. Yeah. You know, but I don't know, I still to this day, I mean, I'll be out on the trap line or something, and I'm just bad. I don't, you know, I mean, I should be more prepared, you know. I mean, the only time I'll leave wood or food at a cabin sometimes, or supplies, is if I think somebody else is going to show up. Or these emergency cabins, you know, I always make sure I leave wood there, you know. But my trapping cabins and this place here, sometimes there's wood when we showed up.
Yeah.
Because all the Alakaka people were here. See, they cut all this wood, you know, and then these people were staying here the other week, you know, and I made sure they had. But, you know, a lot of times I'll come here, there'll be no wood. And a lot of times I'll set off on the trail in the morning, and I'll make sure the dogs got, you know, their fish and maybe a little commercial there for making soup, you know, and stuff like that. And I'll take off, I'll be in a hurry, and I should get some food, and, you know, grab some fish strips, and off you go, you know, and get tired eating fish strips, and out comes the commercial dog food, and I eat that, you know. There have been winters that's probably just out of laziness or something. I can't stand sitting around in the fire and making bread in the morning, you know, for the trail in the day. I'm not just eating commercial.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, you think about it, I mean, you know, you eat a piece of flour or pancake bread, I mean, you get some whole wheat in your system or something like that. Well, grapes dog food, it's got vitamin A through Z.
Everything.
It's got
Extremely
fat,
well balanced.
it's got the right electrolytes, it's got the, I don't mind the taste, I don't care, you know, just, sometimes sometimes I've even had my own little sack of it. You know, I'll put it in a plastic bag. That's my sack of commercial, you know. It'll be right in my sled bag where I can get it real handy, you know, and that's my trail food, you know. Instead of making bread or food in the morning, off I go. I'll have my frozen moose meat. And sometimes I eat frozen moose meat. I don't mind that. I pull out like some, you know, frozen raw moose meat, you know. But that's people in restaurants order that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
They eat frozen meat. And it's a delicacy, you know, some people. You know, I'll eat that, but a lot of times just good old commercial dog food.
Yeah, no, and it's very nutritious. Like a veterinarian used to say, if you ate as good or as well a balanced diet as dog food, commercial dog food, you'd be extremely healthy.
Right. It's a lot better than anything you can buy. I tell you, you go to the stores in town, you go and you try and pick out a meal for yourself, or you know, you think of the best thing, you get some the best thing they got in there, you know, you get some canned peas or something, thinking you're getting some vegetables, and then you get some pork meat and think you're getting some decent meat, and get some bread off the shelf and think you're getting some good grain, and put it all together and you have your nice meal. I mean, that's the best you can buy in those stores, and they don't have it's not health conscious food, you know, and heck, as far as I'm concerned, it can't even equal you know, you'd be healthy to eat dog food.
Yes, yes.
You know,
if
you ate dog food, you'd be better off than, you know. But people get a kick out of me. I mean, it's I almost laugh at myself too, you know, when people are making fun of me or something. They'll make fun of, you know,
there was something said about when you got off the airplane, when you landed in here the first time, that the pilot started telling you about the vegetarians upstream here, and told you to shoot anything that moved as far as something to eat, not to get too picky and choosy. And something about you shot birds or raven.
Yeah.
And he ended up having to shoot ravens to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, that was within, hell, we were eating raven within, I think it was 4 days of landing here. With the pilot, what it was, see, he didn't know these people. He's a pilot from Fairbanks who works for a commercial company in there, bush pilot.
Yeah.
And these people had just been rescued out of here 10 days prior. I think it was about 7 days prior to us landing, and about 10 days prior to us actually seeing their campsite.
Yeah.
Because we went on this hiking trip right after we landed here and came across their place. But and so amongst all the bush pilot companies in Fairbanks and stuff, all this information was circulating about. They found this couple out in the woods that and they had been dropped off there by a bush pilot, and the bush pilot forgot where he landed them and couldn't find him, and they almost starved to death. And so there's this big scare thing among the bush pilots, because it's not good, bush pilot dropping somebody off out in the middle of the woods and then forgetting where he landed them.
Yeah.
That's really bad. Somebody lost. They're probably not thinking lawsuit, but somebody could lose their license over that, or it's just bad reputation for an Alaskan bush pilot. So all these companies, it's real fresh in their mind, they almost weren't going to fly us out. I mean, we were probably the first people that came by since that happened and said, hey, I want to get dropped off in the middle of the woods, which was exactly what those people had wanted to have done. And they, this guy like, well, I don't know, I mean, somebody almost died out there, and, we don't want to just go dropping anybody off anywhere, and what kind of stuff you got, where you from, and I probably didn't seem that experienced, but I probably didn't seem, I don't know what I told them, it was too long ago, but probably told them, yeah, I got a gun, I used to live in BC, and oh yeah, I can shoot a moose, and not to say I'm experienced, but I mean, I probably seem like, well, okay, this guy, seems like a little greenhorn, but he seems like he might be able to take care of himself. So they decided to take us out here. But yeah, he's telling me all this stuff, shoot the first thing you see, don't, it's lean country up here, game's far and few between, and all that stuff. But he dropped us off at that spot down there, put up a little lean-to. He waved by to him, gave him his money, $200. And he almost took off without taking his $200. He was so nervous. Like I say, he landed on that river, and he's just, okay, and you guys take care of yourself, and and let's see, I hope I can get off the river here. It's awful soft snow, listen, when I go to, he had me stand back by the tail of the plane and shake it, so he could get off the river. He could have just blown himself right off. It's a helio career,
Yeah.
Christ, it's just, my later days I realized how green he was, But, yeah, for a minute there, he was almost going to shut the door on us when he was saying goodbye, and I thought, I haven't paid him yet, and I said, hey, we haven't, you want your money? And, oh yeah, gave him $200, and bye-bye, he went off, and so we put up a little camp there that night, and
sleeping bags or what?
yeah, sleeping bags, and I had a little, nice little, real lightweight tin camp stove. It had a little oven, tiny little oven in it, it was a nice little thing, had a nice little lean-to a fire. It wasn't that cold out, 0, 30 degrees in the day. Matter of fact, it was getting way above 30 in the days, but it dropped right down at night, and things would freeze up real good. That night, I remember, my ex-old lady, Helen, Helen, she's, goes right to sleep, and I'm just laying in the sleeping bag, all fired up. All right, we're here. And, all right, tomorrow we gotta go on a hiking trip. We gotta find some place to, meanwhile she just wants to sleep. I remember waking her up, about midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning or something, going, hey, tomorrow we'll, what? Tomorrow we ought to take the, build the little, put the packs on the dogs and, head off, and look for a place, God, let me go to sleep, Anyway, next morning we're off, we're put together some food. And we didn't have much food. I mean, we had some of these cans of meat, canned meat, some canning jars of meat too, and bags of flour. There wasn't much stuff. A lot of it was that U.S. Department of Agriculture stuff, food stamp stuff that we picked up along the way. People didn't want some, just didn't have much, but there was enough for, to probably eat good for a few weeks or a month or something. Like I say, it wasn't that much longer after we landed that I was heading to town to look for food. Yeah. But anyway, we took off with a certain amount of food on this hiking trip, and it was taking us longer than we thought. The first day wasn't too bad. In the middle of the day, it started, 3 foot of snow out there in the back country. And we actually weren't hiking along the river. We were hiking towards the mountains. We didn't even know that the trees are just along the river, and back out towards the mountain. See, we were maybe going to live at the base of the mountains, maybe not even on the river. We maybe going to find a little creek coming out of the mountains or something and live along that. We didn't know, so we were hiking out in the more or less the tundra and black spruce for days. And after about 3 days out, there was a good part of the middle of the day. I think about 11 o'clock in the morning we had to quit snowshoeing because the snow was getting so soft you just punch through, right through, man. Those snowshoes would be going down. You'd just be right down, And then we'd be traveling like in the morning and late in the evening. And that's when we got way up there anyway, 10 miles up, and decided, well, this isn't, we can't live out here, and let's get out of the river, And on the way up, we walked right through the spruce grove and saw the nice open water out in front, and this looked like a nice place, but it was only saw it on the first day out. And we